I remember hearing the story of a man who lost everything in his family, his wealth, his health. He sat in the dust, scraping his sores, abandoned by friends, misunderstood by those closest to him. His name was Job. But do you know what happened in the end? The Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as before. Loss is a painful thing. It can shake you to your core. It can make you question everything, your purpose, your faith, even the love of God. When you've lost something dear to you, whether it's a relationship, a job, your health, or even just the sense of who you once were, it can feel like the end of the road. The enemy wants you to believe that nothing good can come from your brokenness. He wants you to sit in the ashes of what used to be and surrender to despair. But I'm here to tell you today that the valley of loss is not your final destination. It is merely a season, and seasons change. Maybe you've been asking God, why did this happen? Why did I have to go through this pain? My friend, the question you should be asking is, God, what are you about to do with this? Because when God allows something to be taken away, it is never to leave you empty. It is to make room for something greater. Job didn't know that while he was sitting in agony, heaven was planning his comeback. You may not see it right now, but heaven is planning your comeback too. When the enemy steals from you, he thinks he's won. But the Bible says in Proverbs 6:31 that when the thief is caught, he must repay sevenfold. That means whatever has been taken from you, God has already set in motion a divine repayment plan. You may have lost time, but God can restore wasted years. You may have lost relationships, but God can bring new connections that will bless you even more. You may have lost opportunities, but God is preparing doors that no man can shut. The valley of loss is not a permanent place. It is not where your story ends. It is the ground where God builds something new. It is the soil where faith is planted, where perseverance is tested, and where restoration begins. If you are in that valley today, do not despair. Lift up your eyes. Hold on to your faith. Because when God restores, He doesn't just give back what was lost. He gives back more than you ever imagined. Have you ever felt a deep stirring inside? A sense that something is shifting even though nothing has changed yet. That's the Holy Spirit whispering, get ready. It's that unshakable feeling that God is moving behind the scenes, even when your circumstances don't show any signs of improvement. Sometimes before restoration happens in the physical world, God begins His work in the spiritual realm. He starts by awakening something within you, a renewed sense of hope, a quiet nudge in your spirit that tells you to hold on a little longer. You may not be able to explain it, but deep inside you just know that something is about to change. It's the same feeling a farmer has when he plants a seed in the ground. He can't see the growth immediately, but he trusts that beneath the soil, life is beginning to take root. Ezekiel stood in a valley of dry bones, looking at a scene of total devastation. There was no sign of life, just remnants of what once was. It looked like death had won. But then God spoke. He told Ezekiel prophecy to these bones. Now that must have seemed ridiculous at the time. Why speak to something that was clearly dead? But Ezekiel obeyed, and as he prophesied, the bones began to rattle. They came together. Flesh formed on them. Breath entered them. What was once lifeless was now alive. Maybe you've been looking at your life, and all you see is a valley of dry bones, a broken dream, a lost opportunity, a heart that's been shattered, and the enemy has convinced you that it's over. But listen to me, when God starts stirring your spirit, it means He's not done with you yet. The bones may look dry, but they are about to rattle. You may feel empty, but God is about to breathe new life into you. That stirring in your spirit is a sign that your season of loss is coming to an end. It's God's way of telling you to prepare yourself for what's ahead. Sometimes He wakes you up in the middle of the night not to trouble you, but to speak to you. He places dreams and visions in your heart, not to tease you, but to show you what's coming. He starts shifting your perspective, making you restless with where you are because He knows you were meant for more. But here's the key. You must respond to that stirring. You must not let fear or doubt silence the voice of God inside you. Ezekiel could have ignored the command to prophecy, but instead he spoke and life came forth. If you sense God calling you to believe again, trust again, dream again, then step into it. Speak life over your situation. Declare that restoration is coming. Because when God starts moving, no force in hell can stop Him. Joseph was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and locked in a prison. Everything in his life seemed to be working against him. Every door he walked through seemed to lead to more hardship, more disappointment, more waiting. Have you ever felt like that? Like every time you take one step forward, life pushes you 2 steps back. Like no matter how hard you try, no doors are opening for you. But what Joseph didn't know was that behind the scenes, God was setting the stage for his promotion. What looked like rejection was actually divine protection. What seemed like a delay was really preparation. Because in just one day, everything changed. In one moment, Joseph was called out of prison, and by the end of that day, he was standing before Pharaoh as the second most powerful man in Egypt. Some of you have been knocking on doors, praying for an opportunity, waiting for a breakthrough. And it feels like nothing is happening. You've been faithful. You've trusted God. You've done everything you know how to do. But every door has remained shut. Let me tell you, when God opens a door, no one can close it. And when the time is right, that door will swing open so fast it will leave you breathless. Think about it. Joseph didn't have to manipulate his way into Pharaoh's court. He didn't have to force his way into favor. When God decided it was time, the opportunity came looking for him. That's what happens when restoration is near. Suddenly, doors that were once locked will open. People who once overlooked you will recognize your value. The opportunity that seemed impossible will come knocking on your door. But here's the key: you have to be ready when the door opens. What if Joseph had spent his time in prison complaining instead of preparing? What if he had given up on his dream because the wait was too long? He would have missed what God had planned for him. Some of you have been waiting so long that you've stopped expecting. You've settled into survival mode instead of preparation mode. But I'm here to tell you, get ready. God is about to open a door for you that no man can shut. It may not happen the way you expect. It may not come through the person you thought it would. But when God says it's time, nothing can stop it. The years of waiting, the tears, the pain, it wasn't wasted. It was preparing you for the moment when God says now. And when he speaks, chains break, barriers fall, and doors that seemed impossible to open will suddenly swing wide before you. Restoration is not just about getting back what you lost. It's about stepping into something greater. And often, when God is preparing to restore you, he does it by bringing the right people into your life. There are seasons when people walk away, when relationships crumble, when you feel abandoned or forgotten. It's painful, but sometimes it's necessary. Because not everyone who started with you is meant to go with you into your next season. Look at Ruth. She lost everything: her husband, her security, her home. She could have stayed in Moab, stuck in her grief, surrounded by what was familiar. But instead, she followed Naomi to Bethlehem, even though she had no idea what was waiting for her there. She had no guarantee that things would get better. But what she didn't know was that God was orchestrating a divine connection. In Bethlehem, she met Boaz, the man who would redeem her, restore her, and give her a future she never could have imagined. Some of you have been mourning the loss of relationships, friendships, or connections that you thought would last forever. You've questioned why certain people walked away, why doors closed, why some relationships ended so suddenly. But listen to me, sometimes God has to remove people from your life to make room for the right ones. Some relationships were only meant for a season, and if they stayed any longer, they would have kept you from stepping into your destiny. When God is about to restore you, he doesn't just bring back what you lost, he brings something better. He connects you with people who will bless you, not drain you. People who will encourage you, not discourage you. People who will see the calling on your life and help you step into it. You don't have to chase these connections. You don't have to force anything to happen. When the time is right, God will align the right people at the right place, just as he did for Ruth. Maybe you've been feeling alone in this season, wondering why certain people have left. But what if their departure is a sign that God is positioning you for something greater? What if, like Ruth, you are being led to a place where divine connections will change everything? When God restores, he doesn't do it halfway. He places people in your life who will pour into you, people who will open doors for you, people who will remind you of his faithfulness when you feel weak. Don't cling to what God is asking you to release. Trust him. The right people are coming. The right connections are being made. You may not see it yet, but God is working behind the scenes. And when the time comes, you will look back and realize that every person who left, every relationship that ended, was all part of his plan to bring you into something greater. God never restores just a little, he restores abundantly. When he brings restoration, it's not just about recovering what was lost, but about stepping into a season of overflow. Some of you have been in a long season of struggle. You've endured loss after loss, setback after setback, and you've wondered if you will ever see restoration. But I'm here to tell you that when God restores, He doesn't just return what was taken, he gives back more than you could have imagined. Look at Job. He lost everything, his wealth, his health, his children. He went from being one of the richest men of his time to sitting in the ashes covered in sores with nothing left. But Job didn't curse God. He didn't give up. Even in his suffering, he trusted that God was still in control. And when the time of testing was over, Job didn't just get back what he lost. God gave him double. Twice the wealth, twice the blessings, a new family, a new future. That's what God does. He doesn't just bring you back to where you were, he takes you beyond it. Isaiah 61:7 says, instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion, and instead of disgrace, you will rejoice in your inheritance. That means every tear you've cried, every hardship you've endured, every moment of suffering, it's all leading to a greater reward. God is a God of justice, and he will not let you end in defeat. The pain you've endured has a purpose, and the season of suffering is not wasted. Some of you have been wondering if you will ever recover what was taken from you. You've been looking at the broken pieces of your life, trying to figure out how things will ever come back together. But let me remind you, God is not just in the business of fixing broken things. He is in the business of making things new. When he restores, he doesn't give you back the same thing you lost, he gives you something better. Think about Joseph. He wasn't just released from prison, he was elevated to the highest position in Egypt. Ruth didn't just remarry, she became part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. Job didn't just get back his fortune, he received double. What does that mean for you? It means your breakthrough will not just be a return to what you had before. It will be something greater, something beyond what you can imagine. But here's the key, you have to believe it. You have to hold on to faith even when everything around you tells you to give up. Because restoration doesn't come to those who quit, it comes to those who expect God to move. If you keep trusting, if you keep believing, if you keep pressing forward, you will see the faithfulness of God in ways you never thought possible. The years of pain will be replaced with joy. The seasons of lack will turn into abundance. The broken pieces of your life will be woven into a beautiful testimony of God's power. Get ready, because the double portion is coming. The restoration is coming. And when it arrives, you will stand in awe. Oh, God has done that, but here's the key, you must believe it. You must hold on to faith when everything tells you to give up. Because restoration doesn't come to those who quit. It comes to those who expect God to move. Faith is the bridge between where you are and where God is taking you. It's easy to believe when things are going well, when doors are opening, when everything makes sense. But real faith is forged in the fire of waiting, in the silence, in the moments when it looks like nothing is happening. That's when God is testing your heart. That's when he is preparing you for what's coming. The woman with the issue of blood suffered for 12 long years. She had spent all she had on doctors, but nothing worked. She could have given up. She could have accepted her condition as permanent, but she didn't. She held on to faith. And when she heard that Jesus was passing by, she didn't wait for an invitation. She pushed through the crowd. She reached out and touched the hem of his garment, believing that if she could just touch him, she would be healed. And in that moment, after 12 years of waiting, her restoration came. Some of you are in that waiting season. You've prayed, you've believed, and yet you haven't seen the breakthrough. You're wondering if God has forgotten you. But listen to me, he has not forgotten. He has heard every prayer, seen every tear, and he is working even when you can't see it. But you must keep pressing forward. You must keep reaching for him. Blind Bartimaeus sat by the roadside begging until one day he heard that Jesus was passing by. He couldn't see him, but he could hear him. And instead of staying silent, instead of allowing doubt to steal his moment, he cried out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. People told him to be quiet. They told him to stop shouting, but he refused. He cried out even louder, and Jesus stopped. That's what faith does. It refuses to be silent. It refuses to accept defeat. It cries out even when everything around it says, give up. And because of his faith, Bartimaeus received his sight. What if he had stayed silent? What if he had let the voices of doubt keep him from calling out to Jesus? He would have missed his restoration. Some of you are on the verge of a breakthrough, but the enemy wants you to stop believing. He wants you to stay quiet, to lose hope, to settle for less than what God has promised you. But now is not the time to give up. Now is the time to cry out even louder. Now is the time to declare my restoration is coming. My breakthrough is near. God is about to move in my life. You may not see it yet, but it's already in motion. Just like Joseph in the prison, just like Job in the ashes, just like Ruth in the field, just like Bartimaeus on the roadside, your moment is coming. The enemy cannot stop what God has ordained for you. The chains that have held you back are about to break. The doors that have been locked are about to open. The favor that has been delayed is about to be released. But you must believe it. You must expect it. Because God moves where there is faith. And if you will hold on to that faith, if you will keep pressing, keep praying, keep believing, then soon you will stand in awe of what God has done. Soon you will look back and realize that every tear, every trial, every setback was only setting you up for something greater. And when that day comes, you will testify to the world that our God is a God of restoration. And He is faithful to His promises. When God restores, He does it in such a way that no one can deny His hand was at work. He doesn't do it in secret. He makes it known. He prepares a table before you in the presence of your enemies. He takes what was broken, what was stolen, what seemed beyond repair, and He breathes life into it again. And when He restores, He does it so completely that the pain of the past fades in comparison to the joy of what He has given. Think of Naomi. She lost her husband. She lost her sons. She lost everything she held dear. When she returned to Bethlehem, she told the people, "Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter." She was convinced that her story was over, that she would live the rest of her days in sorrow. But what Naomi didn't realize was that God was already writing a new chapter. He was already orchestrating her restoration. Through Ruth, God connected Naomi to Boaz, the kinsman redeemer. And before she knew it, Naomi was holding a grandchild in her arms, a child who would continue the family line, a child who would be part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. The very woman who thought her future was over found herself surrounded by blessing. Her sorrow turned to joy. Her loss was replaced with something greater than she ever imagined. Maybe you, like Naomi, have felt like your story is over. Maybe you've even said, "There's nothing left for me. My best days are behind me." But I'm here to tell you today that God is not finished with you. The same God who restored Naomi, who gave her a future she never expected, is the same God who is working in your life right now. You may not see it yet, but He is aligning things. He is bringing people into place. He is setting up the circumstances that will lead to your restoration. And when that restoration comes, it will not just bless you, it will bless those around you. Naomi's restoration didn't just affect her. It blessed Ruth. It blessed Boaz. It blessed generations to come. That's how God works. His restoration is never just about you. It's about what He is doing through you. When He restores, He makes your life a testimony. He turns your pain into a message of hope. He uses what you went through to encourage others who are still in the struggle.